It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
Good moment, everyone. I just unplugged myself from...
Plug in, man.
I just unplugged myself from command. I've been trying to unplug myself from command and control for nigh on to 60 years now, so I guess I'm making some headway. Good moment, all. Good to be with you.
Yeah. You've been out of town a little bit. This is you're back racking up frequent flyer miles.
Well, not a lot of frequent flyer miles. I was in Vegas for the last 5
Sure,
days. There's not a whole lot of frequent
You're
flyer
right.
miles.
You're
there.
counting the miles on that one. Not so great.
That was an interesting trip.
Vegas is weird. I mean, it's always a little bit of a petri dish. If you
Well,
want to look at the great experiment.
I had a great time. I had a really great time. I was teaching for a few days and then hanging out in the spa. But I noticed as I kind of moved around, not a lot of movement, but as I moved around a bit, I noticed something very strange. There was a lot of beautiful young people. Lots of energy.
Yeah, there's always lots of energy. A little bit desperate, but
I'm not. Some of them very tucked in and assured and very confident, and lots of energy, lots of partying. What happens in Vegas, right?
Right.
And also lots of seniors.
Yes, that's true too.
Lots of seniors.
Yes.
And what struck me is didn't occur to me that there was a tremendous difference. There was at the level of form and stamina in terms of how they play. I don't just mean how they play in the casinos, but how they play, how they do partying, and how they do celebration, how they cut loose.
How they do Vegas.
How they do Vegas.
Yeah.
There didn't seem to be, with the exception of stamina, a lot of difference.
So they're both playing hard. Both the older folks and the hipsters are all playing all out.
Well, yes, and the older folks are playing the same kind, out of the same mood, out of the same environment, out of the same petri dish. When I was very, very small, I had a blue pedal Jeep.
A pedal car, right?
A pedal car.
Yeah.
And it's only now as I say this in the moment that I've just realized as I'm speaking in real time that I'm now 60 years old and I still have a blue pedal car.
You do. Sometimes it'd be better like the Flintstones if you could just kick your feet out and make it work that way.
So the form of playing for a little boy is a little blue pedal car, and for a grown man, it is a big blue sports car. Vroom 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 vroom.
Yeah.
I would like to think that that there is a whole nother expression of what it is to have fun, what it is to be aware that the playground, the environment that we are expressing through as elders, as seniors, there's a very different quality to the play and to what constitutes joy and satisfaction, and what is both at stake in the play and what is the form of the play. And so I didn't get it that there was too much of a difference, except that people were running out of steam in Vegas. So it made me give thought to Dante midway through my life's journey. I came to a place in the dark wood, and the way was lost. My way was lost. And I realized that one of two things happens at that point. We either double back and try and find the trail and head back up the trail and see if we can recapture past glories, or go into the future pretty much the same way we came current. Or we double down, open up new discovered capacities of courage and character, and move forward in making a friend of uncertainty and blazing a path of individuation, and which uplifts and inspires all. And in that way, you have a leader.
Yeah, and to do that from the perspective of having lived several lives. I mean, this is where, I do see this gap in terms of the elders. where, you want to look to them for wisdom and for a sense of groundedness that's assuring to people who are younger. And in some ways, that may be lacking. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because the world has changed so dramatically that I think a lot of people don't know where their footing is, right? That there's culturally, we're in this interesting space that we've never been in before.
Well, we want Virgil. We don't want somebody to tell us how to do it.
No, that's
but
right.
we do want a way shower that suggests possibilities.
Do we have someone on the show who can help us?
We may have our own. I like to think that we've got our own Virgil on the show.
Good.
We're really pleased to have with us friend of the show,
Yeah.
a friend of yours, certainly friend of mine, Jim Selman. Jim is a founding principal of Paracom International, and was a early pioneer in introducing coaching itself. He may have been the primordial coach, the original coach.
He was.
He's a founding member of the Transformational Technologies Council. He's a distinguished author and a great friend. So I could go on, but I would rather cut to the chase and hear from Jim. Jim, welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
So Barnett has sort of queued up a conversation about the place of elders in this emerging, I don't want to use the word paradigm because it's been used so often, but that's what I want to say, this emerging something that is not so tied to how things have been. So if we're looking for teachers who, if I want to learn how to some level of mechanics and someone's done it for 50 years, there's
YouTube for that.
There's a tutelage for that. Yes, but our world has changed, and many of the
We need wisdom.
We need something. But it doesn't have to do with just straight knowledge. It has to do with a way of operating that I think elders can provide if, in fact, they've done the heavy lifting, which we feel, Barnett and I both, you have.
Well, I think it's pretty interesting what you're saying because when Barnett was talking about tutelage and the idea of the young looking to the old for pathways, not advice, it occurred to me that really at this time in history, the game is changing, and the game is changing primarily because of the rate of change. So that having been there, done that, is not the same currency as it was 20 years ago.
That's what I was saying, yeah.
And
absolutely.
Consequently, I think the young and the old are learning together in a way that has never occurred perhaps in human history. And we both have something very important to contribute to each other.
Great. I'd love to draw out some of those distinctions because I think that this is a tremendous point that you're making and that Barnett was alluding to, that there is something that's really fresh and new that some reflection might really serve. What is this, and how can it be really effective, so that we're not looking to elders to tell us how to do things, but we are looking to them for something as we all learn together in this emerging world.
Well, I think that's correct. I mean, my idea of eldering as a verb is something like late life leadership or maybe post-work coaching. It's much more action-oriented in terms of trying to show people possibilities and draw out the best in them. My notion of wisdom is taking the best of your experience and what you know and giving it to others in a way that brings out the best in them. I think that's different. In the past, wisdom was more about knowledge and experience being explaining life to the young. Today, I think it's about more like a team sport.
There is a life experience, once it moves past that long period of time when we try and put Humpty Dumpty back together again, come to the midlife, for many a crisis, for some an opportunity, beyond which the agenda changes dramatically. And I know you and I have spoken about this in the past. The agenda changes, and perhaps for me, what I experience most in terms of the changing textures of my own life, I am at that point. I am more interested, I am more attuned to the emotional states, not from the point of view of being aware of what is coming up in terms of my triggering, but what is the constancy of my attitude. And I am increasingly aware of the relationship between what my general attitude is, my disposition, and that is almost a petri dish, an environment in which whatever actions I undertake, they have an inflection. And similarly, my attitude does have an inflection and an influence upon the actions, the quality of outcomes for others. And I know you have lots to say about that, and I invite you to throw in.
Well, I think so, but I don't know. I mean, the idea of attitude, when I was young, attitude sort of happened, or I just had an attitude, or I don't even think I thought about my attitude much. It was just kind of who I was. As I've grown older, I've found that attitude, like everything else, is a choice. And I no longer have to simply cope with my attitude, but I'm able to generate attitudes that are consistent and appropriate to whatever's going on. You mentioned Vegas and people having fun. Very few people understand that fun is a choice. It's not something that happens because of what's going on. It's not the party that's fun. It's that you bring fun to the party.
Well, this is a quality of understanding that arises out of a relationship with personal experience. It is an expression of knowing that comes out of having been there, a compassionate knowing that comes out of having either had directly experienced something or experienced something similar enough so that you could generate an empathy for it. And I think that compassion is one quality and perhaps the prerequisite quality of eldering. Would you agree?
I certainly would. I think compassion is really the kind of appreciation, really, for what it takes to live and grow and mature and confront life on all different levels, both positive and negative. And it's really about acknowledging what it means to be alive.
And there's again, in our world as it changes, there's so many things. Barnett and I were laughing about all of the former careers that are now obsolete. I mean, there's a whole a litany of things one might have done and become really good at that no longer has any significance at all.
I was a great Encyclopedia Britannica salesperson,
right?
And a fabulous Maytag repairman.
Any kind of repairman's not required.
I ran an amazing bookstore and an even better record store.
Right. So there's and then obviously Barnett had a list of 72 things that are fairly obsolete that were a very short time ago stable career choices. Right. So what's happening in our world is that, it's almost accepted. You're going to have a half a dozen or more careers in your lifetime. You're not going to go to school for one thing and then do it for 40 years. That's just not realistic. So it's interesting. Again, this ability to sort of self-regulate and choose internally, because the face of chaos is what I think a lot of people are challenged by. How do I deal with so much change and so much uncertainty? And where are the elders to sort of demonstrate a graceful way of moving through adversity? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, and I when I talk to people, I try to say, look, really the operative competency here, the skill that you need to have to survive and thrive and prosper in the future is one of learning to be present, of breaking the habit of trying to figure it out and project and understand the future.
So the opposite of control.
It's opposite of control. In fact, that my notion of mastery is really the opposite of control.
So what is the difference, Jim, between being in control and in charge?
Well, I think it's your relationship to whatever you're talking about. So if you view life as bigger than you are, then the best you can do is cope. If you take responsibility for life or your perception of life, and you begin to interact with life from a point of view of you're senior to it, you're the observer, you're interpreting what's going on, and it's your point of view that's going to dominate, then suddenly life becomes a raw material for creating a future.
So we're talking here about in control or in choice. And I want to come back with that because we do have to take a short break. So we will be back. Jim, we'll come right back to you because I want you to extend this more. This is such a valuable inquiry. But we're going to take a break, so stay with us because we'll be right back here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And we're back on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain and our guest, Jim Selman. Before we went to break, Jim, you were starting to go down a path. We were talking about sort of this in charge kind of, or in control kind of mindset versus in choice, the ability to respond, the ability to adapt, the ability to handle a certain amount of adversity. And I want to continue down that path because you called it the operative competency for being, I guess, successful, but maybe we need to reimagine success too, which can be part of the conversation, but just a different way, a different operating system than what would make someone successful in the past. Let's continue with that topic.
Well, I think what I was getting ready to say, Freeman, is that I don't think we have much control over anything, really, if you think about it.
Well, that's a maturity right there, because most folks don't recognize that.
So, and the other thing is that the more we try to control life, the more we're resisting the way it is, and the more we tend to reinforce the patterns in the different practices that we're trying to get rid of. But choice is a very interesting idea because choice to me is about relationship. While we don't control much, we always have a choice in how we relate to what's going on. And to me, choice is about acknowledging and choosing whatever is occurring in the moment. It's kind of like profound acceptance. It's like taking a stand for reality on the terms of how it is rather than constantly resisting and trying to find something wrong and trying to solve problems and trying to fix reality. My view is that people and reality don't need fixing. What we need is to free people up and change our relationship to reality so that we can create the future we want. In that sense, the future is a choice.
I love it. I love it. You know, it brings to mind when I first met you was through Scott Cody and doing the Art of Leadership Mastery, which you came and spoke to the class that I was in. And there's a beautiful piece. The entire premise of the work, which is based on Aikido, which of course has to do with not energetically resisting anything. You're responding to what's coming at you. And this notion of blending and the physicalizing of blending, that whatever's coming at us, we're responding to, and we're clear in terms of how we're committed to showing up. And then what comes at us is sort of then blended into that context. And in this case, and it's something positive, it's something generative, it's something we want to put out or create or something of that nature. And it's such a powerful way to learn to respond to life and have a relationship and relate to what's showing up. At least it was in my experience.
I think you're right, and I think that that's another example of mastery is using what's there to create with rather than trying to overcome and overpower. The mountain climber doesn't beat the mountain. He uses the mountain to get to the top. Or the sailor doesn't overcome the sea. He uses the forces of nature and the ocean and so forth and so on to get from point A to point B. So it's learning to work with life and with reality as distinct from trying to force reality into some kind of an image or some kind of a form that matches your ideas of what it should be.
Well, that's certainly an elder's point of view. That would obviously not be the point of view shared by the let's crush it mentality.
Well, when you were talking about young people in Vegas, again, I was reflecting that for the young, a lot of the attention is on the consequences of the choice. People are imagining the future and
outcome orientation.
Yeah, imagining what would happen if I choose X or Y. They don't realize they're taking their history and they're projecting it in front of them and calling it the future.
Well, that is a fantastic distinction, and so let's talk a little bit about success itself from the developmental perspectives. The young, as you've just pointed out, are treating success as a as some sort of projected outcome, control-driven, some kind of acquisition of either money or power or status or whatever it is that they are throwing out into the future.
And it may not even be theirs. It may be something they just were
It's
handed.
always somebody else's.
Yeah.
It's never theirs. It's
Yeah.
always a hand-me-down worldview.
Some image of what success is supposed to look like.
And on the other side of things, from the elders' perspective, what is success?
Well, I think you're right. I think also in the past it was reasonable to learn from your elders and learn from their parents and learn from your experience and project it into the future and get out of college and be able to imagine a whole career because things didn't change very quickly. It's only the rate of change that's really changed the game for everybody. Success today, I think, is more about observing what's missing and being creative and innovative in the face of a world that's changing faster than we can even comprehend it.
So an elder, and in here I am making the distinction. I'm referring to elders as those who have embraced and moved beyond the idea and come to peace with the idea that the pursuit of acquisitive, i.e., control of reality, is a dance floor they simply have chosen to leave.
They've matured.
They've matured out of to a place where they are able to make a choice to step off it.
Yeah.
You might even say that they've surrendered.
They've surrendered. Yes.
They've quit trying to beat the game, and they all have more or less come to grips with the fact that we're going to die some moment, and it's really how are we going to spend our lives rather than how are we going to
Battle it.
Manage it, yes.
So that now we're back to the compassion piece. Inside of that surrender is a tremendous self-acceptance and acceptance of others. You suddenly have X-ray vision and super hearing, and you can witness behavior in Vegas or anywhere else for that matter. You can begin to witness these orientations and with some love and some appreciation. And also from a perspective that affords for those willing to be willing to pick up the breadcrumbs another path.
I think that's exactly right, Barnett. The thing that blows my mind is you were talking about earlier the 72 occupations or careers that are sort of obsolete now.
Yeah, I call them the has-beens with love.
Well,
Barnett's writing a script right now. There's a house full of has-beens.
Well, those has-beens are sort of all activities and various ways of earning a living.
Yep.
But think about the other things that are becoming obsolete
Yep.
that are really profound to our whole relationship to life. For example, I think the world of jobs, the notion of job is obsolete. I think the notion of competition is obsolete.
Absolutely.
You know, I think that many of the foundation linchpins that sort of give us this orientation to life that somehow we're in control are all breaking down.
I think lots of the hierarchy. I mean, in the coaching that I do with businesses, the whole idea of a boss is really a bad bargain.
Yeah.
The whole idea that the individual brings value, and I love the model where everyone's an independent contractor and they're offering services that are of value and they're receiving, compensation or recognition or dollars or whatever the pay is for that versus having a boss who then tells us what to do. That whole paradigm has come apart. It's just too rigid and too slow to adapt to a world that changes quickly.
That's right. Now, if you're talking to the older population and they're tutting that, isn't that too bad for the young people, and then thinking about the good old days, think about what they could learn from the young people. Like, what's it like to live in a world, in which you have very little, if any, certainty. What's it like to grow up in a world in which you can't predict, you can't trust your predictions? What's it like to grow up in a world where the only thing you can count on are your personal relationships and your imagination and your
Character.
of energy and inspiration?
Well, you are putting some of your considerable energy and talents toward creating models of for elders and for elders supporting elders. The work that you've been doing with the Eldering Institute, for one, that you created, co-created.
I created the Eldering Institute once when I was much younger, and I was realizing how ignorant I was about what it was like to be older.
You were much. Well, how's the song go? The Dylan song?
That's right.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've grown to appreciate is that I got into this because it occurred to me that young people grow older into the same context or frame of mind that the old people do. That most revolutions think the old are going to die off and the young are going to have this brave new world. But in fact, the young keep recreating that same reality because they're growing older into that same frame. It occurred to me that it's time for the older people to take responsibility for the world and clean up the mess before we die.
Say a little more about how you see that and how the older generation can begin to support one another and younger folks too into a more loving, a more promising, a more as I'm saying this, I'm realizing it isn't really about more at all. So I'm interested in hearing how you frame this vision. And
well, I'm working on a book right now called Having It All.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise is that having it all doesn't mean having all the stuff. It means really getting straight with what's the point of living and what are the main values that make life worth living. And it kind of comes down, in my view, to health and happiness, creative expression, and being valued, and love. Love, health, happiness, creative expression, and being valued.
Mm-hmm.
And it might also include some relationship with a spiritual dimension, whatever form that might take for people. But if you think about that's what we've been learning all our lives, then it seems to me that the main role of eldering, the main role of older people, is to pass that insight on to others.
By example.
By example, and also by what you mentioned earlier, having the compassion of young people's struggle to try to make sense out of what otherwise could be a kind of senseless way of looking at the world. I mean, on one hand, you either have a kind of curiosity and a sense of humor and a sort of inspired investigation into what life's all about, or you roll over and just simply take what's handed to you, or you have to discover it for yourself. And I think all of us really need to discover for ourselves what is it that makes life meaningful.
Lao Tzu, I'm gonna savage this one, but Lao Tzu said something to the effect that the most extraordinary of leaders are those of whom it's said, we did it ourselves.
That's right.
Yeah. And I love what you said earlier, just the phrase grown to appreciate. That phrase, I've grown to appreciate something. That's wisdom right there, because it has that element of what you talked about before, kind of surrender, right? I used to hold things in a certain way, but I've changed my mind, or I'm open to another possibility, which is really the big gift. It's not how strongly you held on to a particular belief. It's how willing you were in your lifetime to change your belief based on new information and or possibilities. Because something Barnet talks about a lot, and I think it's valuable to bring up in this moment, is one of the crises that I think we face collectively is one of imagination. We hold success so narrowly. There's, half a dozen ways that we collectively agreed you can be successful, probably starting with money and acquisition, moving on to fame and notoriety and all kinds of other ways. Not all kinds of other ways, because again, it's very narrow. And the ability to sort of imagine that, well, what if there's another way? And it sounds like this book is really exploring, well, let's look at the way we've held success. And maybe there's some other things that are really critical, pertaining to curiosity and a seasoned adaptability. Is that on target?
I think it's on target. I think it's also important to appreciate that it's less what you choose than the fact that you're choosing. I think that too many times we try to get it right. We're so addicted to this sort of objectification of everything. We even objectify consciousness. We speak of consciousness as if it's a thing.
It's not a winning game?
As a thing from maybe it's an unfolding story.
Yeah.
You know, it's an emerging discourse that we call humanity, and that we're all just different players, as Shakespeare said. You know, and the world is a stage. But whatever one's metaphor or model or idea about all this stuff is, I think at the end of the day it comes down to, you know, are you choosing life and your interpretation of life, and are you feeling satisfied, and happy, and empowered, and are the people around you flourishing? What frame you wrap around that is almost secondary.
I appreciate that you are referring to this, that you're wrapping this all up in the domain of choice. I personally am finding a great deal of comfort and personal power and personal authority in that, and I'm in the midst of a practice. I've been doing this practice now for many years. I remind myself the degree to which everything is a choice. Something comes up, I say, even though I could bypass it and go straight to the end, I do take the time to go through the steps. Is this a choice? Yes, it is. Whose choice is it? It's my choice. And what choice am I making? I'm choosing to be this, that, or the other thing. And is that a choice? And that too is a choice. There is something very powerful. I don't really know exactly what that is, but there's something very powerful in taking, in acknowledging the degree to which we are making choice moment to moment to moment. And there's a subtext in everything that I hear you say, Jim.
Absolutely.
And I'll share it with you. You tell me whether this is consistent with the way you are living your life. But it's very clear to me that underneath it there is always this this dialectic back and forth between where am I coming from versus where am I growing to, and you that teeter-totter is always present, and I am always very aware of how it tips in favor of where am I going with you.
I like the word growing. Where am I growing to? That's such a beautiful image, because that does very much, from my perspective, that's who you are, Jim. You're the grower guy. This is a lifetime of growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, well, and I think that's about as well said as I can imagine.
Well, I'll give you 5 minutes. I'm sure that you have no problem.
Well, we're going to have
imagining another 5 ways.
We're going to have to do that next time. So we have, in fact, come to the end of the segment. Jim, I just want to say thanks so much for coming on. I would love our audience to have access to more of your wisdom. What is the best website for your work?
Well, my personal blog where I muse about aging and eldering is called sereneambition.com.
Excellent.
Sereneambition.com.
Some of my business writings are at paracom.com.
We will have those web addresses on our site at Cutting Edge Consciousness for our listeners. So you can learn more about Jim there. And, of course, you can, for those of you that are listening, driving around in your cars, et cetera, in a matter of about a week, 10 days, you'll be able to listen to this again and again and again.
And watch it.
And watch it on the webcast.
And we look forward, of course, to having you back, Jim, so that our audience can have more of your wisdom in the future.
Very good. Well, I'll look forward to it. Thank you very much, Freeman. Thank you, Barnett.
And for those of you
Thanks,
listening, stay tuned, because we'll be right back after these messages here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain. It's reasonable in the past to learn from elders because they had experience in the way that the world is, and we could learn from that. But the world is changing so rapidly that we're all on a learning curve. And so the whole idea of what's the role of elders is shifting. And such a brilliant conversation with Jim Selman, of course, who represents a model of a way of being as an elder that really is a glimpse of what's possible.
I love the distinction that he makes. It's clear that there's a difference between being an elder and being an old person. And age does not of itself bring wisdom. It brings a certain kind of linear experience. But
I think sometimes it brings a rigidity too. I mean,
it can also bring a certain sort of fundamental return to the glory days, kinds of when everything was known, and a certain kind of righteousness. I think that's true. But the elders that have had the most impact and are the most inspiring way showers for me, and I can think of a number, they have had impact because they had a compassionate understanding. They were able to have empathy for what I'm going through inside of my limited perspective of life, not linear life, but of life relative to theirs. And they didn't feel they had to fix me or pull me along faster than my own cadence, that I could only turn on one light at a time. And though they have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 lights on to push this metaphor more, they realized they could not do what we call premature growth syndrome.
Yeah.
They couldn't help me to put on 3, 4 lights. They could just show the way that there is maybe other ways to look at this. So the idea that wisdom has some qualities to it that we can hallmark, benchmark. There is this beautiful quality that Jim demonstrates again and again of being more focused on where he is growing than where he's been.
Yeah.
And there is a quality of being not too rigidly locked into the current picture, being focused on the bigger picture without cutting loose of the current picture. And there is this quality of being focused more on where, on this non-linear, what is there beyond logic and reason in the realm of imagination and mattering and connecting. Without discarding logic and reason in the straight line. Those people are wise.
Yeah.
They are just wise. And there's a different balance between what is smartness, just smart. There's like I'm reminded of the archetypes in the Tarot. There's the naive, and then the street waif, and the street waif is street smart, just can handle himself or herself, just knows all the angles. And then the naive is this innocent, this complete innocent. And they have to be they both have to have, those are both, you can't be out of balance with those things.
Right.
That takes wisdom.
Yeah.
So much of my life has been trying to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, the great figuring out.
To figure it out.
Only to come to the recognition
street
that
smart
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Let's just figure it out, and then I know all the angles.
Yeah.
And it becomes a set of limiting lenses. It's like putting on dark sunglasses, and thereafter you only ever see the world darkly, through a glass darkly. And it takes some wisdom to live a life through a glass darkly and come to a place where it no longer serves. Or one grows enough to see there can be more, and that you can take off those glasses and have compassion for those that are still wearing the glasses. That's an elder. But I know a lot of people who got old and just told you, if you just did it harder behind the dark glasses, you just didn't do it good enough. You could beat the dark glass game, and you can't beat it. We're not going to outthink life.
There's a lot of unwise wisdom out there that's not really wisdom, but is sort of treated that way.
Is righteousness. That's what righteousness is.
Right. And
why do we have this mistake all the time? You hear it constantly in the culture where people refer to righteousness, and they use it as though it means that you're coming from a heart-centered, compassionate, wise place, as opposed to you're coming from a dogmatic place.
Wanting to be right.
Of wanting to be right.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but I mean that's clearly where it gets misconstrued. That there's a quality in being open-hearted, and there's a quality in open-minded. The growing perspective. What am I growing towards? And the quality piece is so important. I mean, I talk about this a lot in my work, where when I talk about visioning, so many people jump into the goal setting. I'm like, oh, it's not really goals, because the truth is a goal operates within your box, within your belief structure. The innovation, the real innovation, you can't see from here. All you know is there are some threads that are going to get you to something. And those are qualities. Qualities of fun, for example, is very generative. We talked about this a lot on the show. It as an energy, it's a it's a great way to innovate. Service, compassion. We can bring this to our choice making. That those are the qualities that we're making choices around. That's the context for our decision making. That we're really looking to sponsor and generate more and more of those kinds of qualities. Connections of quality that creates all kinds of great stuff. And so that orientation and really having the maturity to let go of the outcomes, to let go of not entirely. I mean, this is the best I can see. This is what we've done so far, but there's something right on the other side of it. It's just a placeholder.
This is better.
Yeah. Well, even better is relative. It's like this or whatever comes next, because what I'm vested in is the qualities, and what those are going to generate will be better, of course. But we don't have to even go for better, because it might just be different. Like, we can then have something as an innovation, which is great for one context.
I think you have to allow yourself. You deal with. We have to deal with what we have. We have to bring with love and awareness all of the aspects of ourselves. So when we have a vision, I think you're absolutely right. You have to hold it lightly, but it's a placeholder. I don't have the capacity, the skill yet, it's developmental, to plug in time and again to a frequency of emotional quality, which I understand you're saying is generative. Those are what is generative.
Yeah.
But to just plug in without bringing a story along, I'm not there yet. And so to bring along a story about what has been and what can be, and to use it as a placeholder, knowing that it is the Petri dish out of which I am able to grow these emotional and attitudinal states. That is the role of vision, I think.
Yeah.
And I personally don't have a problem saying better, because so much of my energy still lives in the world of better and less. And for me to jump past it, there's a whole lot of aspects of myself that are left orphaned. I can only jump past them when I'm so familiar and intimate with them, when I'm in such an active dialogue with them, that their needs are met because I'm meeting them. I'm getting esoteric now, but one such experience is, this morning before I left to the studio, I had a few minutes after the shower of being in the kitchen with myself at about 7 years old. And I don't know how this came up, but I remembered when I was packing a lunch in order to run away.
Oh, I love that.
And I just somehow came up. And so I visited that little guy who is so in his own world of having to run away, and had a talk and gave him some comfort, and I wanted to express a certain relationship, energetic relationship with him that to this day in my life requires healing, that I am loved not for what I do, or for my successes, or for how well I do in school or don't do in school, but for who I am.
And then
these are vision setters. These are the Petri dishes, the environments that allow us the capacity to hold visions.
I love the part that wants to run away. I had an experience recently where I was feeling a lot of anxiety, And I had this sense of just wanting to, I told you about the basement apartment my
Yeah.
folks built. And I just want to go live in my parents' basement apartment. I want to run away from my life. And so, I mean, look,
To your
that's
parents' basement
right,
apartment. That's-
right, or wherever. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm like, I
Maybe
could have
take a different basement apartment.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But see, no, that isn't it.
I
The
understand.
part of me that's just so overwhelmed with whatever it is, that
coping.
comes,
We're trying to
that
cope
comes
as-
too.
as
I
Jim said.
don't need to resist that. That moment in life comes up, and it's part of the experience.
But we want to respond to it.
Definitely, and
we don't want to resist it, and we don't want to deny it.
No,
But we want to respond to it, and in the responding to it, we're generating a relationship with the aspects of ourselves that are overwhelmed and inundated.
I took it for a walk.
You took it for a walk. And then the box actually expands
That's it.
and allows you to hold a vision that is grander, has more dimension to it, let's say, than was heretofore possible. And I'm looping around because I think it's important to be able to project out a story. Well, I would like to have this kind of abundance and this sort of success, financial, emotional, and otherwise, this sort of relationship, this sort of qualities. I would like to hold it like that, and to be aware that I am really becoming intimate with the energy, the qualities, as you say, and the trappings of how they show up may be entirely different. But this is the placeholder. From where I am right now, this is how I could conceive of them showing up.
Sure. The thing that I'm really willing to give up in my growing, what I've grown to appreciate, is the fixing of the part of me that goes there, right? So the part of me that comes up when I feel overwhelmed and I want to run away from my life. I want to pack the 7-year-old with the stick and the great painting, the Rockwell painting of the guy taking off with his little bag of goodies on a stick. That's me, and that's me every day. And he comes along too, and the idea that needs to be fixed. It doesn't. It's okay. It's there too. We don't let it drive the bus.
But
We
it
don't
does
let it
want to
run
be
the show.
loved.
Yeah, and it needs to. I need to take it for a walk. The part of me gets overwhelmed sometimes needs to be taken for a walk. And it isn't appropriate when that part starts to come up, let's say in a business meeting, okay, that I can kind of self-regulate and modulate and take care of that and let that part of me know we'll deal with you later is important. Because otherwise I wouldn't be able to do the things I do. But that I don't then over-identify with being, let's say, good in business at the neglect of the part of me that doesn't feel competent and gets overwhelmed and gets insecure and wishes life was simple. It's okay. That part comes too.
So we elder ourselves,
No, I like that.
and when we have a certain kind of fluency in the eldering of the self, then I think what happens automatically is we become an eldering presence for others.
Beautiful. And with that, our presence here is going to end.
He's getting old.
It's done. But we will be back next week. So we invite you to come back next week and keep tuning in to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.